Heading into 2025, which sellers are most likely to sell? And then which homeowners are the least likely to sell? And on top of that, where do investors fall into this whole mix? Also, we're going to go over the most common ways that agents are sharing compensation information, also.
Then we'll look at what real estate professionals said is their number one challenge and how to tackle it. Plus, we'll look at mortgage rate, property value, and how many homeowners are now upside down in a mortgage. This is a real estate backstory, and my name is Ming Richardson. I'm the compliance broker for Maximum One Realty and Realtor Partners.
And I'm Alan Richardson. I'm the managing broker here. And so we kind of want to jump right into looking at who are the sellers today. And if you look at the folks who are most likely to sell, so there's a recent survey from Bright MLS where they went through and basically broke down who's most likely to sell, who's not most likely to sell. And really what they came up with is the folks who are most likely to sell is someone that's owned their home, wait for it, less than 5 years. And this is a pretty recent change. It used to be
Yes.
the average person, and still the average person lives in their home on average 8 to 10 years. But the most common seller right now is someone that bought in the last 5 years. Almost, I mean, we're coming up real close
Well,
to
pandemic
like right
time.
before or after pandemic, right? And so those folks are like 32% more likely to sell their home currently in the market. Now, the other thing that is on top of that, so folks who bought in the last 5 years, but also folks who bought in the last 5 years and are younger. Okay, so our millennials, anyone in the really folks under 50, but like under 30, 30 to 40, 40 to 50, those three age groups right there. That's
Compensate almost 70%.
Yeah, I mean, it really
So
does make up the vast majority of our sellers are under 50 years old. And if you look at that, that's a pretty recent like change. I mean, like even if you looked at the National Association of Realtors study of home buyers and sellers, the median seller last year was 60. And now all of a sudden we're seeing where the most common seller is under 50. That's a pretty significant change that we really need to be aware of and what's really kind of going on. Uh, the other thing that kind of ties directly in there is that these folks are not selling because of mortgage rates or not like for a lot of folks we had so many folks who said oh, we're going to wait until interest rates come down. We don't want to fight through interest rates. That's not the reason. If you look at the folks who are selling,
right now, 30s, they're selling because of family reason. About 35% of them
but almost 44%
are,
of 40s.
yes, are selling
Yeah.
because they want to be either closer to the family or the family has needs.
Yeah. So number one for that seller group is going to be family. Number two is going to be job. Like
Absolutely.
like a lot of our boomer sellers, that kind of stuff. It's not about job. It may be about family for them too, but it's not about job because most of the time these folks are moving into the retirement age, that kind of stuff. Family and job continues to be something that you can kind of pay attention to because the vast majority of our sellers still, even though all those other factors, they don't have a lot of kids in the home, right? But what about those boomers, man? Like when you know we've been hearing for a long time. Boomers have really kind of rocked our market for a long, long time. They've kind of owned the space, as far as that.
Absolutely.
But the bottom line is boomers are not selling, right? Uh, Over half of your boomers. I mean,
50, almost 52% said they're not going to
there's
sell.
no selling, no way, nothing at all kind of thing. Only like less than 5% would sell if interest rates came down.
Only 30% would consider selling their home if you given the right price.
And that price is normally not realistic kind of thing. And
Well,
so
depends.
we're not discounting baby boomers from being a viable option. I mean, we always have folks in different places in their life where selling makes sense, where it's going to be the right choice to do that. But we're just saying overall, I mean, there's been a fairly recent shift where our
Correct.
sellers lived in their home less than 5 years, just kind of wrap up, tends to be between 30 and 50 years old. So our younger sellers, been in the home less time, much more likely to sell right now. For our more mature boomer sellers, that kind of stuff, not so much. Not at least they're not really
They're not motivated. Let's
Yeah,
put it this
yeah.
way.
Now, how that ties in, though, what about with investors? I mean, since we're talking about sellers, and let's talk about investors. Basically, investors break out into two main categories, right? And so you either have the renters, our long term hold people. You have our flippers, and then you have some folks that do a
Yeah,
combination.
and a mixed strategy.
And for a lot of real estate professionals, they just don't understand what that kind of mix really is. Like almost 70% of of real estate investors are buy and hold, are long-term hold people. Only about 7% are like really hardcore flippers, and about what
Hmm.
20% are folks who do some sort of flipping
New
plus,
construction, short
yeah,
term,
that kind of
or
thing.
a mixed strategy.
But generally speaking, the biggest piece out there is for our folks who are investors who are doing
Long term
long
holds.
term holds. And I wanted to, like I know it seems okay, Alan. That's good. That's just good information for us to have. What does that really mean for us? Well, Redfin just came out and they just did a very interesting survey, which kind of ties in directly. So if we say that 70% of our investors are buy and hold folks, right? And they said, hey, investors out there, how likely are you to either buy another investment property?
In 2025.
Yeah, in the next year, kind of thing. And almost like 70% or either very likely or somewhat likely to buy another property in the next year. And on top of that, we said, well, hey, investors, what percentage of you guys would are
Like to
interested
sell
in
it.
sell? And those 33% were very likely 18%. So over half of our
33
of our
percenters.
of our investors, like 70% of our investors are planning on buying another property. Over
Hmm.
half of our investors are planning on selling a property. And we hear all the time, like I'm looking for leads. I need someone to talk to.
Well,
Anyone that owns a rental property is what we're saying, right?
right.
Anybody who owns a rental property, chances are 70% of someone that owns 70% of investors, 70% of them are planning to buy a home in the next year. Half of them are planning on selling a property
Well,
in the
what it
next year.
is that the inventory has aged out. So as the property age, in a rental property, we all know they probably get the minimum maintenance. And so, at some point, some of the items are going to be big ticket items. So while the market is still good, it is,
Well,
I
but
mean,
also, different people change for different reasons too. We've had rental properties that we sold that just, like we had a property way up north, and it was too far for us to try and deal with. And sometimes we had properties that we just didn't want to deal with, or sometimes it's like, hey, you know what? Sure would be nice to have some cash. Let's liquidate this thing.
right.
And what we're saying is, look, now's the time to reach out to be talking to investors. I'm not talking about talking to wannabe investors. If they own rental property, they are flipping. These are the folks to talk to because 70% of them are going to buy a home, another property in the next year, and half are going to sell a property in the next year. And so for us, it's about relationships. It's about building relationships with these property owners, with these investors who are currently investing in real estate. Like we should be like their go-to resource. Now's the time to build those relationships. These are, and honestly, we love working with investors. Well, I mean, in addition to being investors, I mean, Ming had a client that bought how many homes over a course of what, 20 months or something like that?
Yeah, about 15,
Yeah, about
16.
15, 16 homes and so having those kind of relationships really, really do pay off. And so we just want to make sure that you're picking up on the fact that this is a really viable option that can truly help you grow your business. Let's change gears here a little bit and talk about how are agents sharing their compensation information.
Or communicating.
Yeah, I mean, we're seeing where, as soon as the whole NAR lawsuit came out, and then we couldn't advertise compensation as part of our
Or MLS.
on any realtor owned MLSs. Agents immediately started being like, "Well, how am I going to do this?" and that kind of stuff, and websites popped up, and some folks tried to include the information in listing services, and that got stopped. And so, what we're really finding out in at the end of it all It all goes back old school, baby. And 67% of real estate professionals are communicating offers picking up the phone, just like going
Well,
back old school. So,
sometimes that's hard because if you're going to lowball the seller, most likely seller will counter that compensation.
well,
So don't be surprised. So once again, it's about the offer. What's written counts, and what's communicated does count.
I mean, we're seeing where some sellers
But
are not offering compensation,
but
right?
that communication may be changed depending on the offer.
Yeah. So, just to kind of wrap up here, look, we are still using the phone. So,
Yeah,
as I mean, not just still using, like it's the number one source, right? Like 2/3 of compensation offers are being talked about on the phone. So, answering your phone, really important, big deal, right? You got to make sure that we're answering our phones and communicating that. But if that, like Ming was talking about, if that seller's not offering compensation, well, what do
ask
you do
for it.
then? You ask for it in the purchase and sale. Please don't steer clients away from properties like that. It makes it seem like we're only looking out for ourselves on that
Correct.
kind of thing. But we do want to make sure that we still need to be paid, and that buyer is on the like that buyer has signed a buyer brokerage agreement with us, and so that buyer, that's an expense the buyer has to incur. So that's something that you want to make sure you include in that purchase and sale. But it doesn't mean that you shouldn't show that property. So
So once again, how are agent covering compensation? Through communication,
yeah, that really
either
is.
written or a just phone call.
Yeah. Now, one of the, just kind of on topic, but kind of different is that even though we've seen a lot of changes in our industry over this past year, from making sure buyer brokerage agreements are signed up front, how we're communicating offers, all this kind of stuff going back and forth. Guess what's happened to compensation overall? Not
What is
much.
it?
Not much. I mean, just it
It's
really
still
hasn't changed that much, right?
when he said
Because
what's happening, meaning the compensation percentage.
yeah, I mean those numbers are when all this came about, there was all these folks in the news talking
Oh,
about,
you can afford
yeah,
a home much easier.
oh yeah,
Or
those greedy
seller,
agents, that kind of thing.
you can sell a home for much cheaper. Well, guess what?
It really hasn't changed that
It
much.
hasn't
It
changed
it
just
has
because
not changed that much.
our service is valuable.
Mhm.
The marketing know-hows and the marketing environment and the community that we live in is an important source of information for both sides of the equation. So what we provide do add value, and what we provide is just like anybody else for their expertise, their consultant.
Yeah. So in addition to not seeing compensation move, the other thing that we've not seen is we've not seen the use of buyers and sellers agents go down. There was a lot of talk that, okay,
Mhm.
fine, then buyers just won't use agents. Wrong. Like I mean, like that number has been actually
I
increasing,
mean,
and it's
why
still really
would
steady.
you not use seek professional counsel when you're doing your largest investment
Most expensive,
in
yeah.
your lifetime? It's like going to a surgeon, not even getting consultated about what's going on next.
Yeah, nobody's like, I want the cheapest brain surgeon out there. But I mean, like we're dealing with people's most expensive asset,
Correct.
and so the idea that folks would not be looking for someone that they can trust, and see, for us, that's really the big deal here. It's about relationships, it's about trust, it's about being able to carry, our clients through what can be a very complicated relationship if
Sure.
you don't know which way you're going, kind of thing. Buyer agency has basically remained flat. The interesting thing is that seller agency,
Has been going
it's actually
all
up.
time
It's
high.
actually up. Like more sellers use an agent now. For sale by owner is statistically the lowest it's ever been in, well, gosh, since we've
Years.
seen, no, ever that we've ever seen. For sale by owner right now is somewhere right around 4%. And normally half of those are interfamily transfers, which means that really for sale by owners running around 2%. So understand that our value is so important. We have to communicate that value, but stand up for what you're worth, because our clients need us, and we absolutely need our clients
Once
too.
again, it's about relationship and what you develop and the trust that you have, and the competency that they have in you makes a difference.
Yeah. So there was a big poll for realtors kind of across the entire United States. And basically they said, look, what is your biggest challenge, Mr. and Mrs. Realtor? And of course, there was a lot of people in there that said, indecisive buyers, interest rates, NAR, blah, blah, blah. All that kind of came through. But what actually stood out as being the number one, which we were actually a little bit surprised by,
Is consistency.
yeah, the biggest challenge that realtors have just in general is consistency. And honestly,
What does that mean,
well,
really?
but we agree so much. We see where realtors come in, agents come in, and they are fired up, they're ready to go. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this, and then they don't show up to the Tuesday kind of thing, right?
Well,
I
it's
mean,
easier to sit at home and drink a cup of coffee and read a good book
yeah,
versus, actually know what to do each day, how to spend their time, and how to
yeah.
stay consistent and have a goal.
Yeah. So our first tip here is that if you want to be consistent in real estate, and you have to have that consistency to be long term. We've been in the business for a long time, and like for us, it really starts by having what is your action plan, what is your business plan. Like you have to have a set of goals, and then you have to have a plan to achieve those
Correct.
goals. And so are you spending 30 to 60 minutes every day of prospecting, reaching out and engaging with your clients? Are you following up with your past clients? Are you doing social media posts and those kind of things? Do you have somebody that you role play with every day,
Script,
just
because
working on
if you
script? Yeah,
don't do scripts, you will not get
yeah.
really good at it
Are you
because
spending some?
it's
Yeah.
important.
Sorry.
It's
Oh, it's
it
so
doesn't
important.
come
Yeah.
natural.
And then are you spending time in the MLS and doing market research? Do you know your market really, really well? Are you learning and constantly improving? Those kind of things. But like if you don't have an action plan, if you don't have a plan to get you where you need to be, it's so important that you have that, or else you just kind of flounder around. We see, especially with new agents, if you don't have a mentor, if you don't have a process, that kind of thing, we just see where those folks they flop around like a fish out of water because they don't know how to swim. So having that plan is going to be your very first thing. Number two that we really strongly recommend is having a schedule. So many folks got into our business because they didn't want to have a stinking schedule, right?
Well, and that, they think, well, I did 20 minutes work. That's worth a lot of money. So I made multiple calls. You know what? That's nothing in the whole scheme of
Well, we
things.
see where a lot of folks just don't do anything at all. They don't, because they don't have a schedule that they stick to. It's kind of like, well, I'll get to it later. They just keep that round to it button where they're like I'm going to get around to it, and then they never get around to it, right? And so like having a schedule, like is you as a real estate professional, if you owned a brick and mortar business, you would expect that your employees would show up at a certain time in order to open the doors. And you would have a list of tasks and responsibilities that they would do during that business. And you would also have a set of procedures for how they're going to interact with clients and customers. And these are the steps and all the things that they're going to do. And that's exactly right. But you got to understand, you're employee number 001, right? So all those things have to happen for you too. And if you can't get your butt up in the morning and get rolling, I mean, that's one of the biggest challenges for agents is that they don't have a schedule out here. They don't have a time where I'm going to do prospecting for 30 minutes.
Well,
I'm going
it's
to follow
about
up and
discipline and follow
yeah,
that schedule. If you don't follow that schedule, you
yep,
probably will not do very well.
yeah. As far as being consistent, you always want to make sure that you're also taking some time to step back and look at your business. What areas of my business am I weak in? What areas of my business am I missing opportunities to better build relationships, to learn more, those kind of
What
things.
am I not doing good at? What
Yeah.
do I see as deficient in? And what is it that I'm not obtaining this client? What is wrong with my script? What is wrong? And this is not a you're not a good person or anything. It's about improving yourself
Hmm.
and making sure that your flow is good and that you do know the market and that you do sound like a local expert in whatever you say. And that have a number back, don't just say things, but have those number back you up as well.
Yeah. And also be willing to look at what are the things that you hate to do that you don't like to do, either try not to do those or find someone else to do that. If your paperwork stinks, get a TC, get a transaction coordinator,
And
right?
they will help you
Uh,
much more
oh,
so.
and it'll be the best money you've ever spent. So, but just look at your business, see where your business is weak. It may be on certain education. We see where we teach a lot of continuing education, and it never fails. We end up with some folks in our class who are like, "Hey, I've got to get 30 hours in the next 4 weeks," kind of thing, and they're taking every class they can find, as opposed to like if you'll just learn something new every quarter that's part of your continuing education, you'll have no problem getting your hours in, and it's going to help you grow your business, right? So look at what you need to learn. It's really, really important for you to try and do that. So, but we just feel like these are things that can really help you grow your business. That consistency is just the key to
It's
long-term growth.
gold.
It
So
really is. So,
on another subject, mortgage rate actually dropped just a
again,
little bit.
oh,
Thank
but they're
you.
continuing. I mean, we're going on 3 consecutive weeks, and we had a couple of weeks where it just kind of bounced around. So really, we're looking at almost 5 weeks now where we've seen rates dropping. I mean, at one point we were back around
Almost
sevens,
seven.
and
Yeah.
now we're really close to the mid sixes, which is nice to see. Now, what's very interesting is that even though, like Ming said, the rates have not just like skyrocketed back down, they are moving in a positive direction. But what's really happening is buyer activity is, whew,
Going up.
man, it really is, right. And so we know that there's a lot of headwinds out there for our buyers for sure, and we know that interest rates are not where we want to see them. But don't think that because the interest rates aren't under 6 that buyers are not actively
We
engaging.
just got a few that's under contract this week. So even though it's holiday season, I do encourage you to reach out and talk to your clients.
It ain't done. And honestly, now's the time to reach out, because even though they may not buy the week of Christmas and the holidays, that kind of stuff, the relationships, it's all about the relationships. So we just got to be ready for that.
And according to Realtor on the subject of top housing market for 2025, Atlanta is projected to be number 14 ranked
We're the
for
fourth.
affordability.
Yeah. We are the 14th best housing market in the United States. And when you look at, there's a bunch of housing markets for us to be. I mean, we're not in top 10, but we're really close. Depends on who's rating us, by the way.
Correct.
And so there's a lot of activity going on. Sometimes it can be very easy to just kind of miss on the fact that, overall, we're not seeing transactions, the number of transactions where we'd like to see them. But that's heading up. That's moving in the right direction. Don't get yourself into this idea that things aren't happening, because they are happening, and they're happening really strongly here in Atlanta. Because in addition to that, we're also seeing where there is some nice moderate price growth going on. So Fannie Mae just
Came out a
released it.
report
Yeah.
this year as far as of December, not the whole December, 2024 ranked at 5.2 appreciation value, where they're looking at 2025 being a little more conservative, around 3.8. But 2026, they're looking at about 3.6. So no significant decline currently in the housing market, but we are still continue to do that gradual appreciation.
Yeah, I mean, we see those national numbers being. We agree with those here in Georgia. I think we're going to be really close to those too.
And it's nice to see a 5.2 for this year. I didn't think we
Yeah.
were going to hit that high this year, but that's a pretty good
Well,
number.
and the way Fannie Mae goes out about predicting their property values is they go out and they poll just all these big brain economists kind of thing. And then they group them into 3 different categories. You're really optimistic folks, you're more middle of the road people, and then you're pessimistic folks. And
Conservative.
Okay, conservative. That works too. But like the interesting thing is when you look at the breakdown of those 3, none of them are looking at a property value decline. Even the conservative, as you put it,
Yes,
are expecting at least 2.2% property value appreciation. Are more aggressive,
the more optimistic
thank you,
is 5.8.
yeah, almost 6%. And so middle of the road's around 4.1. And so we just feel that that's a really safe place for us to be. Properties have appreciated by about 4.4% for the last 50 years. It's we're not looking at depreciations, those kind of things. As a matter of fact, in talking about depreciation, They also went through and said, hey, how many homes actually have negative equity? How many houses are underwater? And so here in Georgia, the numbers out, and 1.8%.
1.8.
Yes, 1.8% of all the houses in the state of Georgia have any negative equity at all. And so that's the thing. Like you got to understand that 2009, I think, was one of the biggest areas. In 2008,
Yep.
2009, almost 30% of properties in Georgia had negative equity.
Yep.
And, of course, we saw a lot of depreciating values during that time and all that kind of stuff going on. 1.8, I mean, that's almost like nothing. It's some of the lowest numbers it's ever been. There are some states that are higher than that. There's some states running in the 4s and the 2s and the 3s. But for Georgia, we've been pretty consistent with that. And honestly, if you just think I know it may be 1.8%, and which means two homeowners out of 100 are underwater. Doesn't mean they're not making their mortgage payments. That just means that they haven't moved into positive equity yet. That's really, really insignificant. I personally can't think of anybody I know that is underwater in their house. And that's the reason I'm pointing that out is twofold. One, our market's a really safe place. It's a really solid market from that point of view. The second is all these folks who are like, I think there's going to be a market crash. I'm waiting for a market crash. It ain't going to happen, right? I mean, like nobody's going to let their house go. Nobody's just going to be like, you know what? Let's just stop living here.
Just
right?
remember, we all have to have 4 walls of support. So it doesn't matter where you go. They know that it's important to maintain those 4 walls.
Yeah. And then for our Maxim One family, if you have not logged into KV Core, you'll notice it does not look like KV Core anymore. And that's because it has made its transition into the new platform called Bold Trail. And so Bold Trail is here now. Please log in. There's a lot more options and functionality that you can do on your websites. There's a whole new search function. Nothing has changed.
There's also some self-help videos as well.
Yeah. So there's a lot of training, a lot of support for you to do that. We're going to be having more people come in and doing more training to try and help, because we know how powerful having a database and a CRM, a client relationship manager, can really be in helping you grow your business. That's why we've invested in it, so that you can have that investment to help grow your investment. Try and use the word investment business 7 times there.
Okay.
So anyway.
So if you would like to get more real estate tips, ideas, tricks, but please watch one of our mastermind or catch any of our live CE at mx1training.com.
Have a great week.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Bye-bye.